The gunshots echoed through the abandoned warehouse on Chicago's south side, mixing with the deafening sound of rain hammering the metal roof. Vincent Torino pressed his back against a concrete pillar, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead as he quickly calculated his options. 3 armed men surrounded him, and he had only 2 bullets left in his revolver. "Torino!" shouted a voice with a Russian accent from across the warehouse. "You should have accepted our offer. Now you'll die like a dog." Vincent closed his eyes for a moment, not thinking about the approaching death, but about the woman he had left safe in Evanston 3 hours earlier, Sarah Mitchell, the pregnant woman he had rescued from the rain, abandoned by her cowardly husband, the woman who, unknowingly, had become the reason he now risked everything. 12 hours earlier, the morning had begun like any other in Vincent Torino's life. At 6 a.m., he was in his office on the 47th floor of Willis Tower, reviewing financial reports that concealed the true nature of his business. As head of the Torino family, one of the last traditional Italian mob organizations in Chicago, Vincent controlled an empire that stretched from underground casinos to Lake Michigan port operations. But that October morning, something was different. There was a tension in the air he recognized, the kind of tension that precedes war. "Boss," said Marco Santelli, his right-hand man for 15 years, entering the office with a somber expression. "We have a problem. The Russians are making moves." Vincent didn't look up from the documents. At 52, he had learned that showing concern was a luxury leaders couldn't afford. "What kind of moves?" "They made an offer to buy our North Side territories. A generous offer." Now Vincent looked up, his dark eyes narrowing. "And when I refuse?" "Dmitry Volkov said it would be regrettable if something happened to your family." The mention of his family made Vincent's blood boil. His daughter Isabella was studying medicine in Boston, far from the family business, exactly as he wanted. His ex-wife Maria had died of cancer 5 years earlier, taking with her the only soft part that remained in his heart. Threatening his daughter was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. "Set up a meeting," Vincent said, his voice dangerously calm. "Tonight, warehouse on the south side, just me and Volkov." Marco frowned. "Boss, that's an obvious trap." "I know." Vincent stood up, adjusting the cuffs of his custom-made Italian shirt. "But some conversations need to happen face-to-face." The rest of the day passed in preparations. Vincent knew he was walking into an ambush, but he also knew that showing fear would be interpreted as weakness. In the mob, weakness was a death sentence not just for you, but for everyone who depended on your protection. At 7 p.m., he was preparing to leave when he received an unexpected call. "Mr. Torino, this is Sarah Mitchell. We met last night." Her voice was trembling, frightened. Vincent immediately focused completely on the call. "Sarah, what happened?" I think I'm in danger. My husband, he didn't just abandon me. He owes money to dangerous people. They were here today, looking for him. When they said he had fled, they said I would have to pay his debt." Vincent felt familiar anger rising in his chest. "Where are you now?" "At home, but they said they'd be back tomorrow." "Vincent, I don't know what to do. I have no one else to call." Vincent looked at his watch. He had to be at the warehouse in 2 hours for the meeting that could determine his organization's future. But Sarah's frightened voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of another woman, long ago, who had asked for his help when he couldn't give it. "Sarah, listen to me carefully. Lock all doors and windows. Don't open for anyone. I'll send someone to guard your house tonight." "Vincent, I can't ask this of you." "You're not asking, I'm offering." His voice softened. "No one will hurt you while I'm alive." After hanging up, Vincent stood for a moment, processing the situation. He had built his reputation being ruthless, calculating, always putting business above personal feelings. But something about Sarah Mitchell had touched a part of him he thought had died since Maria's death. "Marco," he called. "Change of plans. Send Tony and Sal to Evanston. They'll protect a woman. Anyone who approaches her house without permission doesn't leave alive." Marco looked at him with surprise. "Boss, what about the meeting with the Russians?" "The meeting continues. But now we have one more reason to make sure they understand the rules." The Southside warehouse was neutral territory theoretically. Located between territories controlled by Italians and Russians, it had been used for negotiations for decades. But when Vincent arrived, accompanied only by Marco, he immediately realized that Dmitry Volkov hadn't come to negotiate. There were too many cars, too many men in the shadows, too many weapons. "It's a trap," Marco murmured, his hand moving instinctively to the pistol under his jacket. "I know," Vincent replied, "but if we run now, they'll interpret it as weakness, and weak men don't protect the people they love." They entered the warehouse where Dmitry Volkov waited with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Volkov was a large man with scars on his face that told stories of violence and a reputation for cruelty that made even experienced criminals uncomfortable. "Vincent Torino," Volkov said in heavily accented English. "You came. I thought perhaps you had lost your courage in old age." "Dmitry," Vincent replied, keeping his voice neutral. "You said you wanted to talk about territories. Let's talk." "Ah, but first we have another matter to discuss." Volkov signaled, and two of his men brought a chair. Tied to it was David Mitchell, his face swollen and bleeding, his eyes full of terror. Vincent felt his stomach contract, but kept his expression impassive. "Who is this man?" "This," said Volkov, walking around the chair like a predator, "is David Mitchell, a very stupid lawyer who thought he could steal money from us and then disappear. He owes us $200,000. Vincent looked at David, seeing the man who had abandoned Sarah in the rain, pregnant and alone. Part of him wanted to let Volkov do whatever he wanted with the coward. But another part, the part that thought of Sarah waiting at home, knew this would complicate everything. "And what does this have to do with me?" Vincent asked. Volkov smiled, a cruel smile. "Ah, but it has everything to do with you, my friend. You see, we discovered that you have personal interest in his wife. Our men reported that you took her home last night. Very chivalrous." Vincent kept his face expressionless, but internally he was calculating. How had they found out about Sarah so quickly? "So here's my proposal," Volkov continued. "You give us your north side territories, and we forget Mr. Mitchell's debt. Everyone's happy. And if I refuse?" Volkov shrugged. "Then we kill her husband tonight, and tomorrow we visit the pregnant widow to discuss how she'll pay her late husband's debt." The threat to Sarah was like a switch being flipped in Vincent's mind. All diplomacy, all caution, all careful strategy evaporated in an instant. He had promised her that no one would hurt her while he was alive. "Dmitry," Vincent said, his voice dangerously low, "you just made a very serious mistake." "Oh yes, and what mistake was that?" Vincent smiled, a smile that made several of Volkov's men instinctively put their hands on their weapons. "You threatened someone who is under my protection." What happened next was fast and brutal. Vincent drew his pistol and shot Volkov before anyone could react. Marco did the same with the nearest man, but they were outnumbered 5-1. The war began. Now hidden behind the concrete pillar, Vincent could hear footsteps approaching. 2 bullets left. 3 men. The odds weren't good. His phone vibrated. A text message from Tony, one of his men he had sent to protect Sarah. "Boss, the woman is safe, but there's suspicious movement in the area. We need reinforcements." Vincent closed his eyes. Sarah was in danger, and he was trapped here, probably about to die. But he had made a promise, and Vincent Torino never broke his promises. "Torino!" a voice shouted. "Come out and maybe we'll let you live." Vincent checked his weapon one last time. 2 bullets. He would have to make each one count. "You want to see me?" he shouted back. "Then come get me!" He came out from behind the pillar, shooting with deadly precision. The first man fell instantly. The second managed to fire but missed by inches. Vincent's second bullet hit him in the chest. Now only 1 man remained, and Vincent was out of ammunition. The Russian smiled, pointing his weapon at Vincent. "End of the line, Italian." That's when the warehouse doors exploded. Marco had returned with reinforcements. 12 Torino family men, armed and ready for war. The last Russian didn't stand a chance. 20 minutes later, Vincent was in the back seat of a car, being taken to the hospital while Marco drove at high speed through Chicago's wet streets. "Boss," Marco said, looking in the rearview mirror, Why did you risk everything for this woman? You barely know her." Vincent pressed a cloth against the cut on his forehead, thinking about the question. Why had he risked his life, his organization, everything for a woman he had met just one day ago? "Marco," he said finally, "do you remember my Maria?" "Of course, boss. She was a saint. When Maria was dying, she made me promise something. She said, 'Vincent, you've spent your whole life being feared. Now learn to be loved. Find someone who needs protection and protect her. Not for business, not for power, but because it's the right thing to do.'" Marco was silent for a moment. "And you think this Sarah is that person?" Vincent looked out the window at the city lights passing by. "I think she's someone who deserves a chance to be happy. And if I can give her that chance, then maybe Maria can forgive me for all the terrible things I've done." Vincent's phone rang. It was Tony. "Boss, are you okay? We heard about the shooting." "I'm alive. And Sarah? Safe. But boss, she's asking about you. I think she knows something happened." Vincent closed his eyes. Sarah was safe, but now she was involved in his world, a world of violence, betrayal, and constant danger. He had promised to protect her, but in doing so, perhaps he had put her in even more danger. "Tony," he said, "tell her I'm fine, and tell her I'll be there in an hour." "Yes, boss." Vincent hung up and looked at Marco. "Change direction. We're going to Evanston first." "Boss, you need medical attention." "I need to see if she's okay." Vincent touched the cut on his forehead. "This can wait." As the car cut through the rainy night toward Evanston, Vincent knew his life had changed forever. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He had chosen a woman over his business, heart over logic, love over power. And for the first time in years, he didn't regret a decision. Sarah Mitchell didn't know yet, but the man who had rescued her from the rain the night before had just risked everything to keep her safe. And in the days to come, she would discover that sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected ways, brought by men who carry as much darkness as light in their hearts. The war had begun. But Vincent Torino was willing to fight any battle, face any enemy, to protect the woman who had become his reason to live. The sound of gunshots echoed through the abandoned warehouse on Chicago's south side, mixing with the deafening noise of rain hammering the metal roof. Vincent Torino pressed his back against a concrete pillar, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, while rapidly calculating his options. 3 armed men surrounded him, and he had only 2 bullets left in his revolver. "Torino!" shouted a voice with a Russian accent from across the warehouse. "You should have accepted our offer. Now you'll die like a dog." Vincent closed his eyes for a moment, not thinking about the approaching death, but about the woman he had left safe in Evanston 3 hours earlier. Sarah Mitchell, the pregnant woman he had rescued from the rain, abandoned by her coward husband, the woman who unknowingly had become the reason he now risked everything. 12 hours earlier, the morning had begun like any other in Vincent Torino's life. At 6 a.m., he was in his office on the 47th floor of Willis Tower, reviewing financial reports that concealed the true nature of his business. As head of the Torino family, one of the last traditional Italian Mafia organizations in Chicago, Vincent controlled an empire that stretched from underground casinos to Lake Michigan port operations. But that October morning, something was different. There was a tension in the air that he recognized, the kind of tension that precedes a war. "Boss," said Marco Santelli, his right-hand man for 15 years, entering the office with a grim expression. "We have a problem. The Russians are making moves." Vincent didn't look up from the documents. At 52 years old, he had learned that showing concern was a luxury leaders couldn't afford. "What kind of moves?" "They made an offer to buy our territories on the north side. A generous offer." Now Vincent looked up, his dark eyes narrowing. "And when I refuse?" "Dmitry Volkov said it would be regrettable if something happened to your family." The mention of his family made Vincent's blood boil. His daughter Isabella was studying medicine in Boston, far from the family business, exactly as he wanted. His ex-wife Maria had died of cancer 5 years earlier, taking with her the only soft part that remained in his heart. Threatening his daughter was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed. "Set up a meeting," said Vincent, his voice dangerously calm. tonight. Warehouse on the south side. Just me and Volkov." Marco frowned. "Boss, that's an obvious trap." "I know." Vincent stood up, adjusting the cuffs of his custom-made Italian shirt. "But some conversations need to happen face-to-face." The rest of the day passed in preparations. Vincent knew he was walking into an ambush, but he also knew that showing fear would be interpreted as weakness. In the Mafia, weakness was a death sentence, not just for you, but for everyone who depended on your protection. At 7 p.m., he was preparing to leave when he received an unexpected call. "Mr. Torino, this is Sarah Mitchell. We met last night." Her voice was trembling, frightened. Vincent immediately focused completely on the call. "Sarah, what happened?" I think I'm in danger. My husband, he didn't just abandon me. He owes money to dangerous people. They were here today, looking for him. When they said he had fled, they said I would have to pay his debt." Vincent felt a familiar rage rising in his chest. "Where are you now?" "At home. But they said they'd be back tomorrow." "Vincent, I don't know what to do. I don't have anyone else to call." Vincent looked at his watch. He had to be at the warehouse in 2 hours for the meeting that could determine the future of his organization. But Sarah's frightened voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of another woman, long ago, who had asked for his help when he couldn't give it. "Sarah, listen to me carefully. Lock all doors and windows. Don't open for anyone. I'm going to send someone to stand guard at your house tonight." "Vincent, I can't ask this of you." "You're not asking, I'm offering." His voice softened. "No one will hurt you while I'm alive." After hanging up, Vincent stood for a moment, processing the situation. He had built his reputation by being ruthless, calculating, always putting business above personal feelings. But something about Sarah Mitchell had touched a part of him that he thought had died since Maria's death. "Marco," he called. "Change of plans. Send Tony and Sal to Evanston. They're going to protect a woman. Anyone who approaches her house without permission doesn't leave alive." Marco looked at him with surprise. "Boss, what about the meeting with the Russians?" "The meeting continues. But now we have one more reason to make sure they understand the rules." The warehouse on the south side was neutral ground, theoretically. Located between territories controlled by Italians and Russians, it had been used for negotiations for decades. But when Vincent arrived, accompanied only by Marco, he immediately realized that Dmitry Volkov hadn't come to negotiate. There were too many cars, too many men in the shadows, too many weapons. "It's a trap," murmured Marco, his hand moving instinctively to the pistol under his jacket. "I know," replied Vincent. "But if we run now, they'll interpret it as weakness, and weak men don't protect the people they love." They entered the warehouse, where Dmitry Volkov waited for them with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Volkov was a large man, with scars on his face that told stories of violence and a reputation for cruelty that made even experienced criminals feel uncomfortable. "Vincent Torino," said Volkov in English, heavy with accent. "You came. I thought maybe you had lost your courage in old age." "Dmitry," replied Vincent, keeping his voice neutral. "You said you wanted to talk about territories. Let's talk." But first, we have another matter to discuss." Volkov signaled, and 2 of his men brought a chair. Tied to it was David Mitchell, his face swollen and bleeding, his eyes filled with terror. Vincent felt his stomach contract, but kept his expression impassive. "Who is this man?" "This," said Volkov, walking around the chair like a predator, "is David Mitchell, a very stupid lawyer who thought he could steal money from us and then disappear. He owes us $200,000. Vincent looked at David, seeing the man who had abandoned Sarah in the rain, pregnant and alone. Part of him wanted to let Volkov do whatever he wanted with the coward. But another part, the part that thought of Sarah waiting at home, knew this would complicate everything. "And what does this have to do with me?" asked Vincent. Volkov smiled, a cruel smile. But it has everything to do with you, my friend. You see, we discovered that you have personal interest in his wife. Our men reported that you took her home last night. Very chivalrous." Vincent kept his face expressionless, but internally he was calculating. How had they discovered about Sarah so quickly? "So here's my proposal," continued Volkov. You give us your territories on the north side, and we forget Mitchell's debt. Everyone's happy. And if I refuse? Volkov shrugged. Then we kill her husband tonight. And tomorrow, we visit the pregnant widow to discuss how she's going to pay her late husband's debt. The threat to Sarah was like a switch being turned on in Vincent's mind. All diplomacy, all caution, all careful strategy evaporated in an instant. He had promised her that no one would hurt her while he was alive. "Dmitri," said Vincent, his voice dangerously low, "you just made a very serious mistake." "Oh, yes? And what mistake was that?" Vincent smiled, a smile that made several of Volkov's men instinctively put their hands on their weapons. "You threatened someone who is under my protection. What happened next was fast and brutal." Vincent drew his pistol and shot Volkov before anyone could react. Marco did the same with the nearest man, but they were outnumbered 5-1. The war began. Now hiding behind the concrete pillar, Vincent could hear footsteps approaching. 2 bullets left, 3 men. The odds weren't good. His phone vibrated. A text message from Tony, one of his men he had sent to protect Sarah. "Boss, the woman is safe, but there's suspicious movement in the area. We need reinforcements." Vincent closed his eyes. Sarah was in danger, and he was trapped here, probably about to die. But he had made a promise, and Vincent Torino never broke his promises. "Torino!" shouted a voice. "Come out and maybe we'll let you live." Vincent checked his weapon one last time. 2 bullets. He would have to make each one count. "You want to see me?" he shouted back. "Then come get me." He came out from behind the pillar, shooting with deadly precision. The first man fell instantly. The second managed to fire but missed by inches. Vincent's second bullet hit him in the chest. Now only one man remained, and Vincent was out of ammunition. The Russian smiled, pointing his weapon at Vincent. "End of the line, Italian." That's when the warehouse doors exploded. Marco had returned with reinforcements. 12 men from the Torino family, armed and ready for war. The last Russian didn't stand a chance. 20 minutes later, Vincent was in the back seat of a car, being taken to the hospital while Marco drove at high speed through Chicago's wet streets. "Boss," said Marco, looking through the rear-view mirror, "why did you risk everything for this woman? You barely know her." Vincent pressed the cloth against the cut on his forehead, thinking about the question. Why had he risked his life, his organization, everything for a woman he had met just 1 day ago? "Marco," he said finally, "do you remember my Maria?" "Of course, boss. She was a saint. When Maria was dying, she made me promise one thing. She said, 'Vincent, you've spent your whole life being feared. Now learn to be loved. Find someone who needs protection and protect her, not for business, not for power, but because it's the right thing to do.'" Marco was silent for a moment. "And you think this Sarah is that person?" Vincent looked out the window at the city lights passing by. "I think she's someone who deserves a chance to be happy. And if I can give her that chance, then maybe Maria can forgive me for all the terrible things I've done." Vincent's phone rang. It was Tony. "Boss, are you okay? We heard about the shooting." "I'm alive. And Sarah? Safe. But boss, she's asking about you. I think she knows something happened." Vincent closed his eyes. Sarah was safe, but now she was involved in his world. A world of violence, betrayal, and constant danger. He had promised to protect her, but in doing so, maybe he had put her in even more danger. "Tony," he said, "tell her I'm fine, and tell her I'll be there in an hour." "Yes, boss." Vincent hung up the phone and looked at Marco. "Change direction. We're going to Evanston first." "Boss, you need medical attention. I need to see if she's okay." Vincent touched the cut on his forehead. "This can wait." As the car cut through the rainy night toward Evanston, Vincent knew his life had changed forever. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He had chosen a woman over his business, heart over logic, love over power. And for the first time in years, he didn't regret a decision. Sarah Mitchell didn't know yet, but the man who had rescued her from the rain the night before had just risked everything to keep her safe. And in the days to come, she would discover that sometimes love comes in the most unexpected ways, brought by men who carry as much darkness as light in their hearts. The war had begun, But Vincent Torino was willing to fight any battle, face any enemy, to protect the woman who had become his reason for living. Sarah Mitchell was standing at the living room window, watching two men in dark suits walking down the sidewalk in front of her house. They weren't trying to hide. In fact, they seemed to want to be seen. One of them waved at her when he noticed he was being watched, a gesture that should have been reassuring, but only increased her anxiety. 6 hours had passed since Vincent had called her, promising protection. 6 hours since she had admitted to a virtual stranger that her life was falling apart. And now there were armed men. She was sure they were armed, watching her house as if she were some kind of important person. What disturbed her most wasn't just the presence of the guards, but the efficiency with which Vincent had organized everything. One call from him, and in less than an hour, there was professional protection at her door. What kind of business consultant had this type of resources at his disposal? Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Unknown number. Hello? Sarah, this is Tony. I work for Mr. Torino. He asked me to call and let you know he's on his way. The voice was rough with a Chicago accent, and there was something in it that suggested Tony wasn't the kind of person you'd want to meet in a dark alley. Is everything okay with him? Asked Sarah, surprising herself with the genuine concern in her own voice. There was a pause. He had a difficult night, but he's fine. Should arrive there in 20 minutes. Tony, said Sarah hesitantly, can I ask, what kind of work do you do exactly? Another pause, longer this time. Ma'am, I think it's better for Mr. Torino to answer that question personally. The call ended, leaving Sarah with more questions than answers. She looked around the house she had shared with David, noticing for the first time how empty everything seemed without his things. The walls that once seemed welcoming now felt like an elegant prison. She placed her hand on her abdomen, where a new life was growing silently. Well, baby, she murmured, it looks like your mommy got herself into something very complicated. The sound of an approaching car made her return to the window. A black Mercedes, the same one from the night before, stopped at the entrance. Vincent got out of the passenger seat, and Sarah immediately noticed something was wrong. He was moving more slowly, and there was a bandage on his forehead. She opened the door before he could knock. My God, what happened to you? Vincent tried to smile, but she could see the pain in his eyes. Just a small business disagreement. May I come in? Sarah stepped aside, allowing him to enter. In the living room light, she could see that the bandage on his forehead was stained with blood, and there were small cuts on his hands. You need to go to the hospital, she said, her training as a nurse, a career she had abandoned when she married David, taking control. I already went. I'm fine. Vincent sat heavily on the sofa, and Sarah noticed how he favored his left side, as if his ribs were bruised. No, you're not. Sarah went to the kitchen and returned with a first aid kit. Let me take a look at that bandage. Vincent watched her as she approached, his dark eyes studying every movement. You're a nurse. I was, before I got married. Sarah began carefully removing the bandage. David thought it would be better if I focused on being a proper wife. David is an idiot, said Vincent simply. Sarah stopped what she was doing and looked at him. Vincent, I need to know. Does what happened tonight have to do with me? Vincent was silent for a long moment, his eyes meeting hers. Sarah could see an internal battle happening, the struggle between protecting her from the truth and respecting her enough to be honest. Yes, he said finally. It has to do with you. Sarah felt her stomach contract. Because of David's debt? How do you know about the debt? Because the men who came here today told me. They said David owed $200,000 to very dangerous people, and that now that he's fled, I'm responsible for paying. Vincent stood up abruptly, ignoring the obvious pain the movement caused. What men? What did they look like? Tall, foreign accent. Russian, I think. The leader had scars on his face. Sarah saw Vincent's expression harden. You know them. Yes, I know them. Vincent walked to the window, looking at the guards outside. Sarah, I need to tell you some things. Things that will change how you see me. Sarah finished cleaning the cut on his forehead, her hands trembling slightly. I'm listening. Vincent turned to face her, and for the first time since they met, she saw real vulnerability in his eyes. My name is Vincent Torino. I am the head of the Torino family, one of the last Italian Mafia organizations in Chicago. The words hung in the air between them like a confession that couldn't be taken back. Sarah felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Mafia, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, and the men who threatened you today work for Dmitry Volkov, head of the Russian Mafia. Your husband stole money from them and now they want to use you as collateral. And you helped me because when I saw you in the rain last night, abandoned and alone, it reminded me of someone I lost long ago, someone I couldn't protect. Vincent knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. Sarah, I know how this sounds. I know I should have told you from the beginning, but I couldn't let them hurt you. You killed people tonight, said Sarah, not as a question, but as a statement. Vincent didn't deny it. Yes, I killed. Because of me. Because of you. And I'd do it again. Sarah pulled her hands away, standing up and walking away from him. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything. The man who had rescued her, who had shown such kindness and protection, was a criminal, a killer. But he was also the only man who had risked anything for her in years. Sarah, said Vincent softly, I understand if you want me to leave. I understand if you never want to see me again. But before you decide, you need to know one thing. The Russians won't give up. They'll come back, and next time it won't just be to talk. What are you saying? I'm saying you have two options. You can try to handle this alone. Go to the police, try to hide, hope they give up. Or you can accept my protection. Sarah turned to face him. And what's the price of your protection? Vincent stood slowly, the pain still visible in his movements. There's no price, Sarah. Not for you. Why? Why am I different? Vincent went to the fireplace, looking at Sarah and David's wedding photos on the mantel. Because when my wife was dying of cancer, she made me promise I would find a way to use my power for something beyond violence. She said I had spent so much time being feared that I had forgotten how to be loved. He turned to Sarah, and she could see unshed tears in his eyes. When I saw you last night, pregnant and abandoned, I saw a chance to honor that promise. Not because I expect something in return, but because it's the right thing to do. Sarah placed her hand on her abdomen again, feeling the weight of the decision she needed to make. Accepting Vincent's protection meant entering a world she had never imagined. Refusing it meant facing alone enemies who wouldn't hesitate to hurt her to get to David. If I accept your protection, she said slowly, what does that mean exactly? It means you and your baby will be safe. It means no one can hurt you without going through me first. It means you'll have resources to restart your life however you want. And in return? Vincent smiled sadly. In return, you give me the chance to be the man my wife believed I could be. Sarah looked at him. Really looked. She saw the scars that told stories of violence, but also saw the kindness in his eyes when he spoke about his dead wife. She saw the hands that had killed that night, but that had touched her face with tenderness when he found her in the rain. Vincent, she said finally, if I accept this, I need complete honesty. No more secrets, no more half-truths. If I'm going to trust my life to you, I need to know exactly who you are. You have my word. Sarah nodded slowly. Then yes, I accept your protection. Vincent closed his eyes for a moment, as if an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Thank you. But Vincent, added Sarah, you need to understand one thing. I'm not property to be protected. I'm an adult woman capable of making my own decisions. If we're going to do this, we do it as partners. Vincent smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him. Partners, he agreed. Vincent's phone rang, interrupting the moment. He answered quickly. Marco, what is it? Sarah could hear the agitated voice on the other side, but couldn't understand the words. When? Asked Vincent, his expression becoming grim. How many men? I understand. We're on our way. He hung up and turned to Sarah. We have to leave. Now. What happened? The Russians attacked one of our operations on the north side. This is a declaration of war. Vincent grabbed his coat. And they know you're here. We have maybe 10 minutes before they arrive. Sarah felt panic rising in her throat. Where are we going? to a safe place. A place where they can't find us." Vincent stopped at the door, looking at her with an expression that mixed determination and something deeper. "Sarah, from now on, your life is going to be very different. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Sarah looked one last time at the house that had been her home, at the photos of a life that no longer existed, at the dreams that had died with David's abandonment. "I'm ready," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. They went out into the rainy night, where Tony and another man waited for them with 2 cars. As they drove away from the house in Evanston, Sarah saw in the rearview mirror the lights of several vehicles approaching rapidly. Vincent had been right. The Russians had arrived. But now she was under the protection of the most dangerous man in Chicago, and for the first time since David had abandoned her, Sarah felt truly safe. She didn't know yet that safety would come with a price that would change not only her life, but also her heart. Vincent Torino had promised to protect her, but in the process, both would discover that some protections transform into something much deeper and more dangerous than any external threat. The war had begun, and Sarah Mitchell was about to discover that sometimes, to find peace, you first need to go through fire. The Torino family safe house was located in a restored Victorian mansion in Lake Forest, 40 minutes north of Chicago. Hidden behind high walls and surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens, the property looked more like a weekend retreat for successful executives than a hideout for criminals. Sarah watched through the car window as they passed through the wrought iron gates, noting the discreetly positioned security camera and the men patrolling the gardens. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but there was an underlying tension that she was learning to recognize, the feeling of being constantly on guard. "Is this where you live?" she asked Vincent, who was sitting beside her in the back seat. "One of the family properties," he replied, checking his phone for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. "It's safe. No one outside the inner circle knows this place." The car stopped in front of the main entrance, where a middle-aged woman with graying hair and an apron waited for them. She ran to Vincent as soon as he got out of the vehicle. "Vincent, Madonna mia, what did they do to you?" she exclaimed in English heavy with Italian accent, examining the bandage on his forehead with maternal hands. "I'm fine, Rosa," said Vincent, allowing her to examine him. "Just a few scratches." Rosa then noticed Sarah, and her expression immediately softened. "And this must be the young lady Tony told me about." "Rosa, this is Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, this is Rosa Benedetti. She's taken care of this house for 15 years and makes the best lasagna in all of Illinois." Rosa smiled warmly, extending her hands to Sarah. "Benvenuta, cara mia. Welcome. Anyone Vincent protects is family to us." Sarah accepted Rosa's hands, immediately feeling welcomed by the woman's genuine kindness. "Thank you, Rosa. I don't really know what I'm doing here." "You're doing what you need to do to stay safe," said Rosa firmly. "And we're going to take care of you. Come, you must be hungry." While Rosa led Sarah into the house, Vincent was intercepted by Marco, who had arrived in another car. "Boss, we have problems," said Marco in a low voice. "The Russians didn't just attack the north side. They also hit 2 of our port operations and the casino in Cicero." Vincent felt the familiar rage rising in his chest. "How many men did we lose?" 3 dead, 5 wounded. "But boss, there's something else. They left a message." Marco handed Vincent a blood-stained envelope. Inside was a photo of Sarah leaving her house in Evanston, clearly taken that morning, and a message written in Russian and English. "The woman for your territories. You have 48 hours to decide. DV." Vincent crumpled the photo, his jaw clenching. "Dmitri wants to play this game? Then let's play. Boss, maybe we should consider..." "Consider what, Marco? Handing over an innocent woman to these animals?" Vincent turned to his right-hand man, his eyes burning with anger. "How many years have you worked for me?" 15 years, boss. And in all those years, have I ever handed over anyone who was under my protection?" Marco lowered his head. "No, boss. Never." "Then why the hell do you think I'd start now?" Vincent pocketed the photo. "Double the security here. I want men at every access point." And Marco, "Yes, boss? Prepare the men. If Dimitri wants a war, he'll get a war. Inside the house, Sarah was being given an impromptu tour by Rosa, who seemed determined to make her feel at home. "This is the library," said Rosa, opening the oak doors to reveal an impressive room with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a stone fireplace. "Vincent spends a lot of time here when he needs to think." Sarah looked around, noticing the carefully organized books, not just about business and strategy, but also classic literature, art history, and philosophy. Does he really read all of this? Oh yes. Vincent is much more educated than most people imagine. He speaks 4 languages and has a master's degree in business administration from Northwestern. Rosa smiled with pride. His late wife Maria always said he had the brain of a professor and the heart of a poet, but chose the life of a warrior. "How did she die?" asked Sarah softly. Rosa's expression saddened. "Breast cancer. She fought for 2 years. But sometimes God has other plans." She quickly composed herself. "But come, let me show you your room." They went up an elegant staircase to the 2nd floor, where Rosa opened the door to a spacious room overlooking the gardens. The decoration was elegant but welcoming, with soft tones of blue and cream. "This was Isabella's room, Vincent's daughter, when she visited," explained Rosa. "Now she's in medical school in Boston. Vincent is very proud of her." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, the reality of her situation finally hitting her completely. "Rosa, can I ask, how do you manage to live in this world, knowing what Vincent does?" Rosa sat beside her, her calloused hands folding in her lap. "Cara mia, do you think I haven't asked myself that question 1,000 times? When my husband died and I had nowhere to go, Vincent gave me work and a home. When my son got involved with drugs, Vincent paid for rehabilitation. When my granddaughter needed expensive surgery, Vincent took care of everything." She looked directly at Sarah. "Yes, Vincent does terrible things, but he also does good things. He protects people who have no one else. He takes care of families when husbands die at work. He keeps drugs away from neighborhood schools." "But does that justify?" "It doesn't justify anything," interrupted Rosa, "but it makes things complicated. Vincent isn't a saint, but he's also not the demon people paint him as. He's a man who makes difficult choices in a difficult world." Sarah nodded slowly, processing Rosa's words. "And what about me? Why is he risking so much?" Rosa smiled, a knowing expression crossing her face. "Because for the first time since Maria died, I see something besides pain in his eyes when he looks at someone." Before Sarah could respond, there was a gentle knock on the door. Vincent entered, having changed from the blood-stained suit into casual clothes, dark jeans, and a blue button-down shirt that made his eyes seem even more intense. "Rosa, can you give us a moment?" he asked. "Of course. Sarah, Cara, if you need anything, I'll be in the kitchen preparing dinner." Rosa left, closing the door behind her. Vincent stood for a moment as if he didn't know where to begin. Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands opened and closed nervously. "Things have gotten worse," he said finally. "What do you mean?" Vincent took the crumpled photo from his pocket and handed it to her. Sarah felt her blood freeze when she saw her own image. "They were watching me," she whispered. "Yes, and now they want to make a trade. You for my territories." Sarah stood up abruptly, walking to the window. Outside she could see the guards patrolling the gardens, armed men whose only function was to protect her from other armed men who wanted to use her as currency. "Maybe you should consider it," she said, her voice barely audible. "What?" Sarah turned to face him. "Maybe you should hand me over. Your territories are worth more than a stranger's life." Vincent's expression hardened, and he crossed the room in 2 long strides, stopping right in front of her. "Never," he said, his voice low and intense. "Never say that again. You're not a stranger, Sarah. And even if you were, I don't hand over innocent people to animals. But your people are dying because of me. My people are dying because Dmitri Volkov is a greedy psychopath who thinks he can intimidate anyone to get what he wants." Vincent placed his hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look into his eyes. "This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't ask to be rescued. I didn't ask for you to risk your life for me. No, you didn't ask. But I chose to do it. And I'd make the same choice 1,000 times. Why? She asked, her voice breaking. Why am I so important to you? Vincent was silent for a long moment, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her shoulders. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion, because when Maria was dying, she made me promise I would find a way to use my power to protect someone who really needed it. Not for business, not for strategy, but because it was the right thing to do. He paused, as if struggling with the next words. But if I'm completely honest, Sarah, it's not just about the promise I made to Maria. It's about you, about the way you didn't bow down when David abandoned you, about how you're facing all of this with a courage I don't know if I would have, about how you care about people you just met. Vincent touched her face gently. It's about how, for the first time in 5 years, I wake up in the morning and have a reason to want to be a better man. Sarah felt her heart racing. There was something in the way he looked at her, something that went far beyond protection or obligation. It was something she hadn't felt in years, the feeling of being truly seen, truly valued. Vincent, she whispered, I'm pregnant with another man's child. My life is a complete mess. I know, he said simply, and I don't care. How can you not care? Vincent smiled, a sad but genuine smile, because sometimes the best things in life come in complicated packages. My daughter Isabella isn't biologically mine. I adopted her when I married Maria, but she's my daughter in every way that matters. Sarah felt a tear roll down her cheek. I don't know how to process all of this. You don't have to process everything at once, said Vincent, wiping the tear with his thumb. You just need to trust me enough to let me protect you while you figure out what you want to do with your life. Sarah nodded slowly, feeling something settle in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something that could become love with time and care. Okay, she said, I trust you. Vincent closed his eyes for a moment, as if her words were a gift he didn't expect to receive. Thank you, he murmured. The moment was interrupted by an urgent knock on the door. Marco entered without waiting for permission, his expression tense. Boss, sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The Russians just attacked Tony's mother's house. She's in the hospital. Vincent stepped away from Sarah, his expression instantly transforming into the cold mask of the Mafia boss. Will she be okay? She will, but boss, they left another message. This time it was personal. Vincent turned to Sarah. I need to take care of this. I understand, she said, though she could feel the fear returning. Rosa will stay with you. And Sarah? He stopped at the door. Don't leave this house for any reason, promise me. I promise. After Vincent left, Sarah sat on the bed, placing her hand on her abdomen where her child was growing. In less than 48 hours, her life had changed completely. She had gone from abandoned wife to Mafia boss's protege, from woman alone to someone a powerful man was willing to die to protect. And the scariest part of it all was that she was beginning to care about Vincent Torino as much as he cared about her. Outside, the war was escalating, but inside that room, for the first time in months, Sarah felt like maybe, just maybe, everything could work out. She didn't know that in the coming days, she would be tested in ways she never imagined, and that the man who had promised to protect her would be forced to choose between his heart and his survival. The storm was just beginning. 3 days had passed since Sarah arrived at the safe house, and the tension on the property was palpable. Vincent had left every morning for business meetings, a euphemism Sarah now understood meant war planning, and returned each night darker and more distant. Sarah was in the library, trying to distract herself with a book of Italian poetry she had found on the shelves, when she heard raised voices coming from Vincent's office downstairs. She recognized his voice, tense and controlled, and Marcos, more agitated than usual. Boss, we lost the warehouse on the south side. The Russians blew everything up at dawn. How many men? 2 dead, 4 wounded. But boss, there's something else. They captured Tommy Benedetti. Sarah heard the sound of something being thrown against the wall, probably a glass or ashtray. Tommy is Rosa's nephew, said Vincent, his voice dangerously low. He doesn't even work for us. He's just a kid who delivers pizza. They know that. That's why they took him. They want to show they can get to anyone connected to us." Sarah closed the book, her stomach contracting. Rosa had mentioned Tommy several times, a 19-year-old who was saving money for college. Now he was in the hands of dangerous men because of her. She went down the stairs silently, stopping outside the half-open office door. "What's their demand this time?" asked Vincent. "The same, the woman for the territories. But now they've added Tommy to the package. If we don't deliver Sarah by tomorrow at noon, they kill the kid." There was a long silence. Sarah held her breath, waiting for Vincent's response. "Double the security around Sarah and prepare our men for a rescue." "Boss, with all due respect, we don't have enough men for a rescue operation. We've lost too many people in recent days." "Then we get more men." "From where? The other families won't get involved in a war with the Russians over a woman they don't know." Sarah heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly went up a few steps, pretending she was coming down at that moment. "Sarah," said Vincent, appearing in the office doorway. "I didn't know you were awake." "I heard voices," she said, coming down the rest of the steps. "Did something happen?" Vincent exchanged a look with Marco, who discreetly left the office. "Just business," said Vincent, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders. "Vincent, I heard you talking about Tommy. He was kidnapped because of me, wasn't he?" Vincent sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Sarah, don't lie to me. You promised complete honesty." Vincent led her into the office, closing the door behind them. The room was masculine and elegant, with a solid mahogany desk and shelves full of law and business books. But Sarah also noticed the weapons carefully organized in a glass cabinet and the security monitors showing different angles of the property. "Yes," said Vincent finally. "Tommy was kidnapped because the Russians want to pressure you into surrendering." Sarah sat heavily in one of the leather armchairs. "An innocent boy is going to die because of me." "No," said Vincent firmly, kneeling in front of her. "An innocent boy might die because Dmitry Volkov is an animal who has no limits. This isn't your fault." "But I can stop it," said Sarah, looking directly into his eyes. "I can surrender myself and save Tommy." Vincent's expression hardened. "Absolutely not." "Why? Why is Tommy's life worth less than mine?" "It's not worth less. But surrendering won't save Tommy. Volkov will kill him anyway, just to prove he can. And then you'll be dead too." Sarah stood up, walking to the window overlooking the gardens. Outside, she could see the guards on their constant rounds, men who risked their lives every day to protect her. "How many more people are going to die because of me, Vincent?" "However many it takes." The coldness in his voice made her turn to face him. "How can you say that?" Vincent stood up, his expression becoming the cold mask she was learning to recognize, the face of the Mafia boss, not the gentle man who had rescued her from the rain. "Because that's how this world works, Sarah. You show weakness once, and all your enemies will try to exploit that weakness. If I hand you over now, how many other innocent people will Volkov kidnap in the future, knowing I give in to blackmail? So Tommy is an acceptable sacrifice. Tommy is a victim of a war I didn't start, but I will finish." Sarah felt tears of frustration forming in her eyes. "I can't live knowing people are dying because of me." Vincent crossed the office in 2 long strides, grabbing her by the shoulders. "Then don't live for your sake. Live for the child growing inside you. Live because you deserve a chance to be happy. Live because if you die now, Volkov wins, and men like him will continue terrorizing innocent people. What if I can't live with the guilt?" Vincent pulled her closer, his hands moving to frame her face. "Then I'll help you carry that guilt, because that's what people who care about each other do." Sarah looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, but also seeing the pain. "You carry a lot of guilt, don't you? More than you can imagine. Tell me about her, about the person you couldn't protect." Vincent stepped away, walking to the desk and leaning against it. For a long moment, Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. "Her name was Elena," he said finally. She was my first wife, before Maria." Sarah felt a stab of surprise. Vincent had never mentioned a first wife. "I was young, arrogant. I thought I could have a normal life and still be in this business. Elena was a teacher, completely innocent about my world." Vincent looked at his hands. When my family's enemies found out about her, they used her to get to me. What happened? They kidnapped her, asked me to hand over my father in exchange for her life. Vincent closed his eyes. I was young and stupid. I thought I could save her without sacrificing my family. I organized a rescue. Sarah could see where the story was going, and her heart contracted. It went wrong. Elena died in the shootout. And it was my fault, because I didn't have the courage to make the hard choice. Vincent, after that, I swore I would never put an innocent woman in danger again. That's why when I met Maria, I was completely honest about who I was from the beginning. She chose to stay knowing exactly what she was getting into. Vincent looked at Sarah. But with you, it's different. You didn't choose this world. You were thrown into it, and I'll die before I let happen to you what happened to Elena. Sarah felt tears streaming down her cheeks. But what if the only way to protect me is to destroy everything you've built? Then that's what I'll do. The simplicity of his answer left her speechless. Here was a man who had built an empire through force and strategy, willing to destroy everything for a woman he had met less than a week ago. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Vincent crossed the office again, wiping the tears from her face with his thumbs. You deserve everything good this world can offer, Sarah. And if I can give that to you, I will. Before Sarah could respond, there was an urgent knock on the door. Marco entered, his expression tense. Boss, sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The feds are at the entrance. Vincent stepped away from Sarah immediately, his expression becoming alert. How many? 6 cars. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh is leading. Sarah saw Vincent stiffen at hearing the name. You know this agent? I know her. She's been trying to arrest me for 5 years. Vincent turned to Marco. What do they want? They have a search warrant. They're looking for evidence related to the Russian attacks. Vincent cursed in Italian. Do they know about Sarah? We don't know. But boss, if they find her here, I know. Vincent turned to Sarah. You need to leave. Now. Where to? Rosa has an apartment downtown. You'll stay there until this passes. Sarah felt panic rising in her throat. What about you? I'll deal with the feds. Don't worry about me. Vincent, what if they arrest you? Vincent took her hands, squeezing them firmly. If that happens, Marco will take care of you. You'll be safe, I promise. I don't want you to be arrested because of me. Sarah, said Vincent, his voice urgent. Listen to me. No matter what happens, don't surrender to the Russians. Even if they say they have me, even if they threaten other people. Promise me, Vincent. Promise me. I promise, she said, though the words came out as a whisper. Vincent kissed her forehead, a gentle and desperate kiss. Rosa will take care of you. And Sarah, if something happens to me, there's an envelope in my desk drawer. Inside there's money and documents, enough for you to restart your life anywhere you want. Before Sarah could protest, Rosa appeared at the door with a small bag. Come, cara mia, we have to go through the back exit. Sarah looked at Vincent one last time, memorizing his face, the way his dark eyes softened when he looked at her. Be careful, she said. I always am, he replied. But there was something in his voice that made her wonder if he was lying. As Rosa led her through the back corridors of the mansion, Sarah could hear loud voices coming from the main entrance. Official, authoritative voices demanding entry. They exited through a side door that led to the garage, where a discreet car waited for them. As they drove away from the property, Sarah looked back and saw the federal cars surrounding the mansion like vultures. Will he be okay? She asked Rosa. Rosa squeezed her hand. Vincent is a survivor, Cara. He's been through worse things. But Sarah could see the worry in the older woman's eyes. And as they drove through Chicago's dark streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had left Vincent to face something that could destroy him. The downtown apartment was small but comfortable, hidden on the 3rd floor of an old building. Rosa quickly settled her in, checking the locks and closing all the curtains. Don't leave for any reason, instructed Rosa. And don't answer the door for anyone except me or Marco. After Rosa left, Sarah sat on the small sofa, placing her hand on her abdomen. Her child was growing in a world of violence and uncertainty, and she didn't know how to protect him. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Sarah Mitchell? The voice was female, professional. Who wants to know? Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, FBI. I need to speak with you about Vincent Torino. Sarah felt her blood freeze. I don't know what you're talking about. Mrs. Mitchell, we know you're under Torino's protection. We also know your life is in danger because of the war between the Italian and the Russian families. Sarah didn't respond, her mind racing. Mrs. Mitchell, I can offer federal protection, real legal protection. All I need is your cooperation to arrest Torino. I won't betray Vincent, said Sarah firmly, even if it means saving your life and your child's life. Sarah felt tears forming. How do you know about the baby? We know many things, Mrs. Mitchell, including the fact that Torino killed 3 men 4 days ago. Men who, however dangerous they were, had families. They threatened to kill me, and now Torino is threatening to kill others. Where does this end, Mrs. Mitchell? How many more people are going to die before you realize you're on the wrong side? Sarah hung up the phone, but the agent's words echoed in her mind. How many more people were going to die? Tommy was already in the Russians' hands. Vincent was being investigated by the FBI, and all because she had agreed to get in his car that rainy night. She looked out the window at the city lights, thinking about the man who had risked everything to protect her. Vincent Torino was a criminal, a killer, a man who lived in a world of violence, but he was also the man who had rescued her when she needed it most, the man who looked at her as if she were precious, the man who was willing to lose everything to keep her safe. And for the first time since it all began, Sarah wondered if maybe she was falling in love with him. The phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. Marco? Sarah, you need to come back. Now. What happened? Is Vincent okay? The feds are gone, but... Sarah, the Russians have Tommy, and they sent a video. Sarah felt her stomach contract. What kind of video? The kind that shows they're not playing around. Vincent wants you to see it. He says you have the right to know exactly what's at stake. 30 minutes later, Sarah was back at the mansion, being led to Vincent's office. He was standing behind the desk, his expression darker than she had ever seen. Are you sure you want to see this? He asked. Sarah nodded, though her stomach was contracting with fear. Vincent turned on the laptop on the desk, and the screen showed a grainy video. Tommy Benedetti was tied to a chair in a dark warehouse, his face swollen and bleeding. Behind him, a man with a Russian accent spoke to the camera. Vincent Torino, you have 12 hours. The woman for the territories and the boy. If not, the boy dies. And then we're coming after the woman anyway. The video ended with Tommy screaming when someone off-screen hit him. Sarah covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. My God! Now you understand, said Vincent, his voice cold. There's no negotiating with men like Volkov. No middle ground. It's total war or total surrender. Sarah looked at him, seeing the determination in his eyes, but also seeing the pain. What are you going to do? Vincent closed the laptop. I'm going to do what I should have done from the beginning. I'm going to end this. How? Vincent smiled, but there was no joy in that smile. I'm going to give Volkov exactly what he wants. A war. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Vincent, you can't. I can and I will. Because the alternative is living the rest of my life knowing I bowed to an animal. And I'd rather die fighting than live as a coward. That night, while Sarah lay in the bed that had been Isabella's, she could hear Vincent and his men planning downstairs. Low voices discussing strategies, weapons, attack points. She placed her hand on her abdomen where her child was growing and made a silent promise. I will protect you, she whispered. No matter what happens, I will protect you. But as the voices continued downstairs, planning a war that could destroy everything, Sarah wondered if she would be strong enough to keep that promise, and if Vincent would survive to see the man he was trying to become because of her. Dawn came gray and cold over Chicago, as if the city itself sensed the violence that was to come. Sarah had slept little, waking several times to the sound of cars arriving and leaving the property during the night. When she finally came down for breakfast, she found the house transformed into a military headquarters. Men she didn't recognize were scattered throughout the living room, cleaning weapons and studying maps. There was a tension in the air that made her skin tingle, the feeling that something irreversible was about to happen. Vincent was in the office, speaking rapid Italian with 3 older men Sarah assumed were heads of other families. When he saw her at the door, he signaled for her to wait. "So it's decided," said one of the men in English, heavy with accent. "We attack simultaneously at 3 points. But Vincent, are you sure it's worth it? A war with the Russians will cost a lot of blood." "Salvatore," replied Vincent, his voice firm. "If we don't stop Volkov now, he'll continue expanding until he controls the entire city. This isn't just about territories. It's about survival." The man called Salvatore nodded reluctantly. "Very well." The man called Salvatore nodded reluctantly. "Very well. But if this goes wrong, the blood is on your hands." After the men left, Vincent turned to Sarah. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines of tension around his mouth. "You didn't sleep," she said. "There wasn't time." Vincent approached her, his hands moving automatically to frame her face. "Sarah, I need you to know what's going to happen today. You're going to rescue Tommy. I'm going to try, but the chances—" Vincent stopped as if he couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah placed her hands over his. "You're going to succeed. I know you will. How can you be so certain? Because you're Vincent Torino, and you don't give up on the people you protect." Vincent pulled her closer, embracing her with an intensity that spoke of farewell. Sarah could feel his heart beating against her chest, fast and strong. "If something happens to me today," he murmured in her ear, "I want you to take the money from the safe and leave the city. Go somewhere no one can find you. Nothing's going to happen to you." "Sarah." "No." She pulled back to look into his eyes. "Don't talk like it's a goodbye. You're coming back to me." Vincent smiled sadly. "You have too much faith in me. I have faith in the man who rescued me from the rain, the man who risked everything to protect a stranger." Sarah touched his face gently. "The man I'm falling in love with." The words came out before she could stop them, honest and raw. Vincent went still, his eyes widening. "Sarah, I know it's crazy. I know we've known each other less than a week. But Vincent, when you look at me, I feel like I'm the most important person in the world, and I've never felt that before." Vincent closed his eyes, as if her words were both a gift and a curse. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do. I'm saying I love you, and that you need to come back to me because I can't raise this baby alone. Not because I can't, but because I don't want to." Vincent opened his eyes, and Sarah saw unshed tears there. "I love you too," he said, his voice hoarse. "God help me, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone again." He kissed her then, a desperate kiss full of unspoken promises. Sarah lost herself in it, in the taste of coffee and determination, in the way his hands tangled in her hair, as if she were an anchor in a storm. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. "Come back to me," whispered Sarah. "Always," promised Vincent. 2 hours later, Sarah was in the library with Rosa, trying to distract herself with a book while waiting for news. But the words danced on the page without making sense. Her mind focused entirely on the man who had left for war. "He'll be fine," said Rosa, looking up from her sewing. "Vincent is a survivor. How do you manage to stay so calm?" Rosa smiled sadly. "Cara mia, I've lived in this world for 15 years. I learned that worrying doesn't change the outcome, it just makes the waiting harder." Sarah's phone rang. It was an unknown number, but she answered anyway. "Sarah Mitchell." "Yes, this is Agent Walsh again. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to listen carefully. We know about the planned attack for today. Torino is walking into an ambush." Sarah felt her blood freeze. "What do you mean?" "Volkov has informants in Torino's organization. He knows the attack is coming. He's prepared." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because despite everything, you're a victim in this situation. And because if Torino dies today, you and your child will be in mortal danger." Sarah stood up, walking away from Rosa. "What do you want from me? Help us stop this. Call Torino, tell him to cancel the attack. In return, we offer complete federal protection for you and your child." "And Vincent?" Torino made his choices, Mrs. Mitchell. Now you need to make yours. Sarah hung up the phone, her hands trembling. If the agent was right, Vincent was walking to his death. But if she called him, she would be betraying his trust, admitting she had spoken with the FBI. "What is it, Kara?" asked Rosa, noticing her agitation. "Rosa, do you have Vincent's number?" "Of course. But he said not to call unless it was an emergency." "It is an emergency." Rosa dialed the number, handing the phone to Sarah. It rang several times before Vincent answered. "Rosa, what is it?" "Vincent, it's me, Sarah." "Sarah, what happened? Are you okay?" "Vincent, you need to cancel the attack. It's a trap." There was a long silence. "How do you know that?" Sarah closed her eyes, knowing her next words would change everything between them. "The FBI called me. They know about the attack. They said Volkov has informants." "You spoke with the FBI?" Vincent's voice was dangerously low. "They called me. I didn't seek them out." "And you believed them?" "Vincent, what if it's true? What if you're walking into an ambush?" "Sarah," said Vincent, his voice becoming cold, "do you understand what you just did? Do you understand that now I can't trust any information you have? I'm trying to save your life. You're interfering in things you don't understand." The call was cut off, leaving Sarah staring at the phone in shock. Rosa approached, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He's angry," said Sarah, tears forming in her eyes. "He's scared," corrected Rosa. "Scared that you might be right." At the abandoned warehouse on the west side, Vincent was standing with Marco and 20 armed men, studying the building where Tommy was being held. But his mind wasn't completely focused on the mission. He was thinking about Sarah's call. "Boss," said Marco, "do you think she's right about it being a trap?" Vincent observed the building through binoculars. It seemed too quiet, much too quiet. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we can't let Tommy die because of doubts. What if it is a trap?" Vincent lowered the binoculars, looking at his men who trusted him to bring them back alive to their families. "Then we improvise." They moved in silence, dividing into 3 groups as planned. Vincent led the main group, which would enter through the front, while the other 2 groups would flank from the sides. But when they burst through the warehouse doors, they found only darkness and silence. "It's a trap," murmured Marco. That's when the lights came on, revealing Dmitry Volkov and at least 30 armed men strategically positioned around the warehouse. Tommy was tied in the center, but Vincent could see the boy was unconscious, or worse. "Vincent Torino," said Volkov, his voice echoing in the empty space. "You came. How predictable. Let the boy go, Dmitry. Your fight is with me." Volkov laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Ah, but you see, the boy has already served his purpose. He brought you here." Vincent saw Volkov's signal, and one of his men shot Tommy. The boy didn't move. The rage Vincent felt was like a nuclear explosion in his chest. "You son of a bitch. Now," continued Volkov as if nothing had happened, "let's discuss the terms of your surrender." "I don't surrender to animals." "No? Not even to save the life of your precious Sarah?" Vincent felt his blood freeze. "What do you mean?" Volkov smiled, taking a phone from his pocket. On the screen, Vincent could see surveillance images of the apartment where Sarah was hidden. "You really thought we didn't know where she was? My men are 2 blocks away. 1 word from me and she dies." Vincent looked around, quickly calculating his options. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and now Sarah was in direct danger. "What do you want?" "Simple. You surrender, sign the transfer of all your territories to me, and maybe I'll let the woman live. And my men? Your men can leave. This war is between you and me." Vincent looked at Marco, seeing the loyalty and fear in his friend's eyes. Then he looked at his other men who had risked their lives for him, who trusted him to make the right decision. "Boss," whispered Marco, "don't do this. We'll find another way." But Vincent knew there was no other way. "Not this time." "I accept," he said, lowering his weapon. "Vincent, no!" shouted Marco. "It's the only way," said Vincent, looking at his friend. "Take care of Sarah, promise me." Marco nodded reluctantly, tears in his eyes. Vincent walked slowly toward Volkov, his hands raised. But when he was 3 meters away, his phone rang. "Answer it," ordered Volkov. Vincent looked at the screen. It was Sarah. "Answer it," repeated Volkov. Vincent answered, putting it on speaker. "Vincent," came Sarah's voice, clear and strong. "Are you okay? Sarah, you need to leave the city, now. I'm not going anywhere without you." Volkov laughed. "How touching. Say goodbye, Torino." But before Vincent could respond, there was a deafening explosion. The warehouse windows exploded inward, and men dressed in black invaded the building from all directions. "FBI! Everyone on the ground!" What followed was total chaos. Gunshots, screams, smoke. Vincent threw himself behind a concrete pillar, pulling Marco with him. "How the hell did the FBI get here?" shouted Marco over the noise. Vincent thought about Sarah's call, the information about the ambush. "Sarah," he murmured, understanding. The battle lasted 15 minutes. When the smoke cleared, Volkov was dead. Half his men were arrested and Vincent was handcuffed on the ground with Agent Walsh pointing a gun at his head. "Vincent Torino," she said, "you're under arrest for murder, extortion, and a dozen other charges." Vincent didn't resist. As he was led out of the warehouse, he saw Tommy's body being placed on a stretcher. The boy was alive, unconscious, but alive. In the police car, Vincent closed his eyes and thought about Sarah. She had saved his life, even knowing it could destroy any chance of a future between them. She had chosen to protect him, even if it meant betraying him. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Torino didn't know if he should be grateful or heartbroken. 3 hours later, Sarah was at the police station, waiting to see Vincent. Agent Walsh had kept her word. Sarah was under federal protection, and the charges against Vincent would be reduced in exchange for his cooperation. But when they finally brought her to the visiting room, Vincent barely looked at her. "You did the right thing," he said, his voice empty of emotion. "Vincent, you saved my life, and the lives of my men. Tommy will recover, but you're arrested." Vincent finally looked at her, and Sarah saw that something had changed in his eyes. The tenderness was still there, but there was also a distance that hadn't existed before. "I always knew this day would come, Sarah. Men like me don't have happy endings. This doesn't have to be the end." "Yes, it does." Vincent leaned forward, his handcuffed hands on the table. "Sarah, you deserve a normal life, a safe life. You deserve a man who can give you that. I want you. You want the idea of me, the man who rescued you, who protected you. But the reality is I'm a criminal who's going to spend the next 10 years in prison." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I'll wait." "No," said Vincent firmly. "I won't let you waste your life waiting for me." "Vincent." "Sarah, listen to me. Take the money I left for you. Change your name. Change cities. Start a new life. Marry a good man who can be a father to your child." "My child is yours too," said Sarah, placing her hand on her abdomen. Vincent closed his eyes, pain crossing his face. "No, Sarah. Your child deserves better than having a criminal as a father." The visit ended with Vincent standing and walking to the door without looking back. Sarah remained seated in the chair, watching the man she loved disappear from her life with the same determination with which he had entered it. 2 years later, Sarah Mitchell, now Sarah Johnson, thanks to the documents Vincent had provided, was sitting in a park in Portland, Oregon, watching her 1.5-year-old son play in the grass. Michael had his father's dark eyes and her smile, and was the light of her life. She had followed Vincent's advice partially. She had changed her name and city, started a new life, but she hadn't remarried. She couldn't. Her phone rang. It was a Chicago number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Sarah, it's Marco." Her heart raced. "Marco, how did you get my number?" "Vincent gave it to me in case something happened." "Sarah, he was released today." Sarah felt the world stop around her. "What?" "Exemplary behavior, cooperation with authorities. He served 2 years of a 10-year sentence." "Where is he?" "Here in Chicago." "But Sarah, he doesn't want you to know. He made me promise I wouldn't call." "Then why are you calling?" Marco sighed. "Because I saw him today, and he looks like a dead man inside. He asked about you and the baby, but when I offered your address, He refused. Sarah looked at Michael, who was trying to catch a butterfly. Does he still love me? Sarah, that man never stopped loving you, but he's convinced you're better off without him. And you? What do you think? I think two people who love each other should have the chance to choose their own destiny. That night, after putting Michael to bed, Sarah stayed awake looking at the stars. Vincent was free. He was alive. He was just a few hours away, and for the first time in 2 years, she allowed hope to bloom in her heart. She didn't know that in Chicago, Vincent was standing at the window of a small apartment, looking at a photo of her and Michael that Marco had secretly taken, a photo that showed a beautiful woman and a smiling boy in a sunny park. Both were thinking the same thing: if love was strong enough to overcome the past and build a future. And both were about to discover that some love stories are too strong to be destroyed, even by the most impossible circumstances. The rain had stopped. The sun was rising. And sometimes, just sometimes, the right people find their way back to each other.